Well, good morning, church. And welcome again to Homecoming Sunday. It is so good to see you all here today. Thank you for coming. The name Homecoming always makes me think about high school. There's the big homecoming game and the homecoming dance. I can't play football. Surprise! You're like, oh, no. That became very clear early on in life. I remember one game in PE where I somehow inexplicably ended up with the ball completely by accident, and I froze. And everyone was like yelling at me, and I didn't know which way to run, so I just stood there like I was holding a live grenade, and eventually someone tackled me, and it was flag football. So, but honestly, I was just relieved that it was over, because then I didn't have to decide. So anyway, football wasn't my calling. I do love dancing. I really do. I just wish I had the talent to match my enthusiasm. In high school, I was in the musicals again. Big surprise, right? And every time, no matter what role I had, even if it was like a lead or something, the choreographer would always find a way to gently scoot me to the back during the big dance numbers. And there I'd be, giving it everything I had, but you can't see my feet, because there's a covering wall of more coordinated classmates. Now, if there was like a play version of the movie The Jerk, I could totally, I was born to play that role. But real dancing never quite looked right on me. It's something about the way that my hips relate to my feet. Like, I can tell that they're connected, but they don't know. I'll never forget, though, one rehearsal where I was just flailing through this routine, and just completely off, and the choreographer at the time was this incredible man named Ray Hatch, and he stopped everything, and he took me aside, and he looked at me kindly, and he said, "David, you may never get these steps exactly right, so why don't you focus more on staying in step with the spirit of the song?" Which is the nicest way anyone has ever said, "Boy, you are terrible. And I can't help you. So maybe just move your arms and enjoy yourself." Because he knew from the everything about me that I would never become one of those dancers that, we all love to watch. The ones who do every move perfectly and are completely absorbed in the song, and they just radiate joy and passion and love. And Ray knew that the best I could ever pull off would be one of those dancers who are clearly counting the whole time and just thinking really hard about what step is next, and their faces just look miserable. You ever seen that? You've been to those dance recitals, right? It's hard, and they're like 4 hours long, and their face. But this isn't just about dancing. We have all confused performance with connection. And not just in dancing or on stage or at work, but in deeper places too. In the ways we try to be faithful, in the ways we try to love. Not that trying is wrong. Doing the right thing matters, even if your face doesn't agree. But sometimes, even when our actions are right, our spirit isn't in it. We're going through the motions. We're technically correct, but emotionally absent. We're doing what's expected without ever letting ourselves be moved. And if we're not careful, we can start living that way. Checking the right boxes, following the steps, but missing the music, missing the spirit. And that's the real problem. Not that we get it wrong, but that we're not in it, not really present, not in step with the spirit of the song. And maybe you're feeling like that right now. Maybe you've been going through the motions, being polite, being productive, being responsible, but deep down you feel disconnected. You might be the spouse who's stuck in step but not in love. Or the volunteer who's still serving but mostly out of guilt. Maybe you're the one holding your family together, making meals, running errands, showing up for everyone, but feeling invisible. Maybe you keep praying, even though it feels like your prayers just bounce right back at you. And the quick fix is just to quit, right? Quit doing whatever drains you. And sometimes, honestly, that can be the right option, but quitting isn't the only answer. Sometimes the invitation isn't to walk away, but to wake up, to come back to yourself, to pay attention to the rhythm underneath it all, the one you may have forgotten you were even supposed to be dancing to. And that's what the letter to the Galatians is about. It's a letter full of passion, written to people who, like us, sometimes lost the plot. People who got caught up in rules and routines, in proving themselves and protecting appearances. People who started out in step with the Spirit, but somewhere along the way forgot how to hear the music. Now, the letter was written in response to the first big tension in the early church over circumcision, which comes up a whole lot in the New Testament, but almost never in conversation today. And it is a point of interest in the New Testament because when the good news about Jesus Christ got out of Israel, it really took off among people who weren't raised Jewish. And once they came to the faith, some of the religious authorities told them that if they wanted to make extra sure that they were right and good and on God's side, then they needed to be circumcised. And the Apostle Paul was like, whoa, pump the brakes. And he wrote this letter to show that not only did they not have to, but if they did, it would show that they didn't really believe the good news that had brought them to Jesus Christ. And the letter culminates in this list of actions and character traits that Jesus gives and grows in his people that we call the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, thank you, generosity or goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, it's not a to-do list, though. It's not a list of things to try harder at, but signs of life. Signs that the Spirit of Jesus is alive in us. So over the next few months, we're going to look at all the fruit, piece by piece. But before we get to the fruit, I want to start with just one verse that comes a few verses later in Galatians that captures, I think, the whole essence of the whole thing. It speaks to people who were saying, if we just follow all the rules, if we do everything the way the religious authorities expect, then we'll be safe and right with God. And honestly, that can sound appealing. Rules give us boundaries. They make things clear. They give us a way to measure ourselves. But Paul writes that there's more at stake than just safety. He tells them that if they settle for living only by the rules, that they are actually cutting themselves off from the Spirit. They might look religious on the outside, but they will be missing the life and freedom that comes from God on the inside. So he calls them to something bigger. Not just to follow the rules, but to live by the Spirit of Jesus. Because rules can restrain us, but they can't set us free. They can shape our behavior, but they can't transform our hearts. And so it all kind of culminates, at least to me, in this short verse. Galatians 5:25 says, "If we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit." If we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit, which is one of those verses that if you saw it like cross-stitched on someone's wall, you might not look twice at. But this word that's in blue here for keep in step with was often used to describe soldiers marching. Soldiers marching. You know, think, you can picture it. The perfect rows and columns of warriors moving together in rhythm. Left, right, left, right, left. No room for improvisation. No one stands out. Everyone has fallen in line. Which is admittedly a pretty common picture of church to a lot of people. But it's not one that we usually have. And it's kind of the opposite of what Galatians seems to be saying, if you read it, about following the rules. So maybe there's something more going on here. Because, I don't know about you, but what I need right now isn't more clarity about what's right and wrong. Most days I know what I'm supposed to do. What I need is the strength to do it. The courage to keep going when it feels like nothing is changing. The motivation to put one foot in front of the other, even when my heart's not in it yet. I need to hear the voice of my spiritual sergeant saying, left, right, left. Love, joy, peace, and patience too. Left, right, left. Kindness, goodness coming through. Faithfulness and self-control. Marching on heart, mind, and soul. Sound off. I don't know the rest of that, how that goes. I didn't army either. I didn't football, I didn't army. But that was fun. Thank you for doing that. But I need that. Don't you need that? Because maybe that's the point. Sometimes we need something that's simple. Not a whole system of beliefs to figure out. Not a perfect feeling to fuel us. Just a beat to move with. A rhythm to remind us that we're not alone. Because we aren't. It's not supposed to be a solo march. It only really works if we are doing it together. You see, the Galatians weren't saved by a bunch of new rules, but by the Spirit making them into a new people. A team. A body. You know, when you're on a team, when you're in a body, when you're in a people, we don't all have to feel strong on the same day. That's part of the design. You know, some days you're the one setting the pace, and other days you're just trying hard not to fall out of line. And that's okay. Because when we stay in step with the Spirit together, we make space for one another to keep moving. So if your joy is low, walk with someone who's singing. If your patience is thin, stay near someone who's steady. If your love is running dry, borrow some from the person beside you. That's what the Spirit does in community. It's not just about personal growth. It's about learning and working together as a group. It's about a people learning to move together, even when the terrain gets hard. And friends, it might. It really might. The road we're on isn't always smooth. The path the Spirit leads us down isn't always easy or clear. But if we're in step, if we're listening for the rhythm, if we're willing to walk it out together, even when it's awkward, even when we're not sure we believe every word we're saying, even when we're moving more out of muscle memory than inspiration, because sometimes that's what faith looks like. Not waiting until you are just full of joy and peace and love, but stepping anyway. Trusting that the rhythm will rise up to meet you. So you show up, you serve, you speak gently, you forgive. Not because your heart is already there, but because the Spirit is. And you're choosing to trust that your heart will catch up. That's not faking it. That's how we grow, one step at a time. But it's not always about forcing yourself to move either. Sometimes the motivation does come first. Sometimes the Spirit shows up early, fills you with energy and clarity and conviction, and suddenly you've got fire in your bones. And if that's where you are right now, if you're feeling it, if the music's loud in your ears, don't keep it to yourself. That's not just for you. It's for the rest of us too. Because in this kind of march, in this kind of movement, nobody gets to carry the rhythm alone. And nobody's supposed to. So if you've got joy today, sing it out. If you've got peace, speak it over someone else. If you've got patience, offer it to someone who's about to lose it. That's what keeps us going. That's how the Spirit moves. Not just in us, but through us. So whether you're stepping with conviction or you're barely hanging on, whether the music is loud or barely audible, whether the feeling is right there or still out of reach, we move together. We don't leave each other behind. We don't point fingers when someone stumbles. We don't celebrate alone, and we don't suffer alone. We're a family. We're a team. We win together. We lose together. We get back up together. So when one of us is strong, we carry the ones who aren't. When one of us is tired, we slow the pace so no one falls behind. When one of us finds the rhythm again, we shout it loud enough for the whole line to hear. This is not a competition. This is not about perfection. This is about faithfulness, about showing up for each other, showing up for our world, about letting the Spirit set the pace. Left, right, left, right, left. Together. Always together. Because the Spirit isn't just leading you somewhere. The Spirit is leading us. Not just to be better people, but to become a different kind of people. A people marked by love that doesn't quit, joy that shows up in the dark, peace that holds on when everything else is falling apart. A people who practice patience, who choose kindness, who believe in goodness even when it's hard to see. A people who stay faithful, who move gently, and who follow Jesus together. It's not weakness, it's resistance. This is what it looks like to live by the Spirit. To walk out of step with the world so we can stay in step with Jesus. That's where we're headed. This is who we're becoming. Not by force, not by fear, but by the Spirit of Jesus. Step by step, together.